Our old businesses have refused the tax deed follow-up. And this will be on page 71 of your packet.
There were two parcels that you wanted to get more information on. And I don't know which one, probably 39 Central Street is the one where you've got the most information in your packet. I included the GeoInsight report as well as I asked Peter Frank from GeoInsight to send an email that I could give to you that gave his feedback on this. I think our recommendation is that it's time for the city to take this and do something with it. It's very defined. We know what the problem is. We know where it is. At the time, and you'll see it in the notes, that they were doing the studies there, they thought that the building was going to be raised. And you can see in that report that even if the building stays, it can be done. It's just going to take a little bit longer, but it can be done. So that's, are there any questions on this one?
Any questions from the council? Assistant Mayor Dameron.
Yeah, if the building is not raised and stays the way it is, what would be the approximate cost of doing the remediation as compared to what it would be if the building were raised and you had an open field?
I did not get a comparison of costs. I was told that we would probably be eligible for reimbursement. Mm-hmm. We would have to pay $500 as our part of the cost. So if you do decide to take it by tax deed, once that's done, we would apply for the reimbursement fund from the state.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Paul.
Someone refresh me on how much this person owes in back taxes?
Oh, I don't have that number off the top of my head.
About 60,000.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time.
So people understand what we're talking about.
2005.
Yep.
Nancy, was this the one with the owner unknown issue as well?
Yes, the owner's location has been unknown. So when we took the back of the building down, that people were falling through the floor and stuff, we had to do special publication because we couldn't give notice to the owner. And I still don't think we know where he is, right?
We send the notices to Boston, which is the Boston address.
Yeah.
So I have a question. When you go through the GeoInsight, I think it's GeoInsight reports, the leakage from the above-ground tank was caused by vandalism, correct?
Mm-hmm. Somebody took the copper pipe.
Right. Is there, in that case, is there any coverage, since we had to deal with the issue, the city had to deal with the issue and incurred some costs, do we get anything through insurance coverage as far as reimbursement if it's caused by vandalism?
I do not know. We didn't own it, so my guess is that they're probably going to say no, but we could always ask.
We don't even know if this property was insured. It highly likely didn't have any insurance.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about the property owner's insurance. I'm talking about the city insurance, since we had to take action due to vandalism.
No, that's not really how the Primex works on that, because we didn't own the property. What would normally happen is we would be able to lien that property, but in this case that's kind of a moot point because there is nobody to lien and they haven't been paying the taxes, so they certainly wouldn't pay the lien.
If it's sold, obviously you can lien it and get the proceeds if you sell it.
Right. Councilor Pope?
So I'm reading the GeoInsight report, and there's also concern about some asbestos pipe wrap and lead paint in that house, which lead paint is probably a standard issue with most of these houses. But
right.
So we take this, we become on the hook for the fuel spill, the asbestos removal, and lead paint abatement.
That's up to you in terms of the asbestos and lead. I mean, I'm guessing that many of the houses that you take by tax deed in Claremont that you auction probably also have lead paint and asbestos. At this time, you're not talking about taking down the building, in which case, yeah, we'd have to clean it out. But it's possible. If these funds are reimbursed, we potentially can go clean it all out.
So follow up on that. These are a few questions asked at the historic, and I think I know the answer on them, but I'll ask them anyway. First thing is, so we go to auction, and we auction that house, and we auction it for, say, $500. Are they liable, whoever buys it, for the back taxes? That's what I thought. Yeah, that's the first one. Second one is if we sell a known hazardous waste site, say this one or another one that a lot of people are looking at. This comes back to what I was asking before. Are we on the hook to fix that before we sell it?
I would advise you, if you are going to take this property, to clean it up before you put it out for auction.
So
I
if
think
we-
there's always a risk, even if you say as is, whatever. To me, it's, if you're able to get the reimbursement to clean it, I would recommend that.
Yeah, so the other elephant in the room does come down to the Topstone building. There are some issues there. Are we on the hook to have to fix those if we take the building before we resell it?
You are becoming the responsible party when you take this building. I think what makes this one maybe more unique or different than, say, Topstone is it's a very defined, very clear problem. We've got much bigger issues at Topstone regarding where some of these contaminants are even coming from. So it's that particular site is in progress.
I guess I follow up a little bit more. I guess I look at these because I can remember all the fun we had with Goddard Bakery,
Yeah.
and I think we're still,
Yes, we are still
We're s-
paying for
we're still,
groundwater monitoring. That's why I'm saying I would
we bought
not
it broke and we're
auction.
still trying to fix it.
Yeah, I would
So-
not auction this unless you remove that oil and it's closed by DES.
When someone buys it for $1,000.
Yeah.
Assistant Mayor Dermott?
Yes, I guess I'm not seeing too many great options with this property. We can choose not to take it
Just leave it.
and just leave it as an eyesore to continue to deteriorate and become a bigger eyesore, and nothing will happen.
Right.
Or we can choose to take it and at least take some action somewhere on something, albeit the cost goes along now for a period of time. We had an oil leakage when we replaced a boiler at the middle school, and I believe we're still doing some groundwater monitoring for that one. So I know the process, but without taking it, we can't do anything. The owner's unknown, the location's unknown, we aren't going to get the back taxes, and it just sits.
Mhm.
Am I seeing that right? Okay. that's
Counselor
what I thought.
Stone?
Now, it's my understanding from reading all the reports that, and correct me if I'm wrong, since Mr. Pope sits on the Historic Commission, is that they would like to see it remain a structure.
That was the vote of the
Commission.
commission, is also noted the ultimate decision comes up to the council.
Okay. I would be in favor of the council taking a serious consideration of taking the property based on the fact that we are pouring in a lot of time, money into Pleasant Street, and it spills off into Central Street. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, and the manager can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the most substantial eyesore that we have on Central Street now. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
And it's been prolonging its life. There's no real reason not to take it that I can see. You know, you look at the history of Claremont, a lot of the old houses have asbestos. They have lead paint. That's not a real significant deterrent when you're dealing with properties that are over, 100, 120 years old or older?
There's ways to contain things.
Yeah.
You know, and you said there's, grants that are available. Plus, if the city wants to have control of it versus just destroying it, the city would have control over what happens in the future of it versus just putting it out to auction.
And my comment, if I may, is if the city does take ownership of it, that gives us the authority to explore a lot of different avenues as far as grant funding to restore that building, if it is indeed as valuable as a Greek revival type architecture worth preserving. So the other thing is, I know if we took it, then we could apply for an L-chip grant, correct? And my other question is, I don't know what Mr. Garvin's status is, because that letter was written in 2012. But before, we've been through this process now with the City Hall, they'd have to do an assessment of the interior. And I don't know what the interior is like. I don't even know if there's anything left to assess at this point in time, because it stood vacant for so long.
It was cleaned out at the time when this work was done. The interior was a mess. People had been squatting in there, and there was no running water and no toilet, and it was horrible. It was cleaned out at the time that the back wooden section of the building was taken down. So.
Okay. Councilor Kowalski?
I was trying to get your attention earlier. I just wanted to make it clear I'm still seated here and didn't recuse myself because we were discussing just this property. So if we're going to discuss other properties such as the Topstone building, I would recuse myself and go take a seat in the audience. But I have a few comments as it relates to this property.
Sure, okay.
So we have had access to the property before for a walkthrough assessment of it before we took the back portion of the building off. I would be in favor of taking this property, but not at this time. I don't think there's no ticking clock right now, and I'd like a few more answers, like identified action plan. So if we can get back into it, and I watched the Historic District Commission meeting, they would like to get into the property to do an assessment. I would like that as well. But maybe we can also have an environmental consultant go do the same thing at the same time, so we know what we're exactly talking about. So something that could be $5,000 could rapidly turn into $100,000. And when I say I want an identified plan, the school district had talked about and looked at the JSL building and other off-site buildings. Is this something that maybe that would work for their needs? It's already in a school zone. So you're having a meeting with them tomorrow. I don't know, that just an idea, but that would be an identified plan, and I imagine that would be, even knowing what I know of these grants, an identified use or outcome of this actually helps get those grants.
I would just, two comments. When we went into the building the last time, we had filed a 155B court order, so we had authority to enter. So I just have to check to make sure that we can still enter. Now.
Even if we can, and we have to go through that court process again, we've already traveled that road. I just would like, you have the Historic District Commission has the same goal as I do. I'm not looking to tear the thing down. You're going to get $200 for a lot of grass. But I think we can get an identified use and know exactly what we're dealing with before we make the decision.
And Mr. Frank is an environmental consultant. He was our environmental consultant.
I think he identified the issues in his report. Okay, so Mr. McNutt.
Yeah, so I just have a couple sort of concerns that, you're right, Mr. Frank is an environmental consultant, so as Nancy and I and other city staff members discuss this property, I mean, what it looks like the center of gravity of the problem is that anywhere from 0 to 700 gallons of heating oil leaked into the ground around the house. That's honestly not, in my estimation, too big a burden. Will it cost probably a couple grand in tipping fees to dig up all that soil and transport it off-site? Yeah. But in the scheme of things, to make that property viable again, if that's really the linchpin is the fuel oil that's in the ground, we can get that topsoil removed. There might be some concern about whether some of the oil went underneath the foundation of the house. I mean, that's getting into kind of a stretch. And then whether there's any potential for groundwater monitoring. I mean, that's really the hook for the future, is whether we have to do groundwater monitoring. But other than that, this really looks to be a small scale spill. It's not really that serious. It's a historic structure. So I really, in discussing it with my team, we really would not be too concerned about taking it. The other major concern that I have, though, is that we have very limited staff. And we have a number of other major projects going on. I really would not want this to become a major project right away. Obviously, doing the work to get that fuel oil topsoil removed and then applying for the reimbursement grant, I think is very important to do. But if we do take it, I'm asking the council to not expect immediate action on getting this thing ready to be turned around and put on the street, because we have a lot of other irons in the fire.
Counselor Kolaski?
So after hearing that furthers my no rush at this point. So even if we made the decision, they don't have time to deal with it. The only outcome of that is now it is firmly our responsibility. And anything that needs to happen with the property, it's on us to deal with. So that may go from no issue right now to an immediate need without us even thinking about it. And I understand why you would take a property like this, but the outcome without identifying what you're going to do with it, if it's just going to go to auction, you have to consider the fact of the person that's going to be looking at that property has to abide by historic standards now for that property. So that may be a drawback to it. And the other one is I just don't want to take property, clean it up, turn around at an auction and sell it for $500 and have it sit exactly like it is right now. And I can point to some other cases in the community that has happened. So we're going to foot the bill to clean it, and then we're going to sell it lowball, and then we're going to sit here and complain that the lawn's not mowed and there's nothing we can do about it. And I just don't want to do that. I'd rather have a real identified plan.
So my response to that is, I think by taking ownership of the property, there are a lot of things that we can do in the interim. And what you just said, I think there are a lot of assumptions being made that it would go to auction. We know from lessons learned in the past, I think Mr. McNutt has talked about this, anything to go on the auction block in the future would have a reverter clause. I mean, there's ways to mitigate it, but I am very much interested in personally taking the property, having some control over it, start the process for getting the reimbursement. And I'd like to see, Mr. McNutt has already clearly said that there are other higher priority irons in the fire. However, that does not prevent the Historic District Commission to take some actions that they could be investigating, such as working with the city staff support, how much support they're able to give, I don't know, but going after an LCHIP assessment, communicating, I mean, that is under the purview of the Historic Commission. So I'm not in favor of not taking it at this point in time, because I think enough work can be done to improve this property and get reimbursement of monies and investigate many, many options. So, anybody else like to make a comment before we take a vote? Councilor O'Hearn.
It's either Ms. Merrill or Ms. Melcher. Can you tell me how many times this has come before the council to be taken?
So the oldest lien on this is 2005. So it's been available for the city to take for the 2005 taxes, which would have been 2008. So we're going on 8 years anyway.
Thank you.
Councilor Stone.
I would like to say that, given the history of it, I think it's time that we take the property, we move forward,
Yep.
we deal with the issues, and we rectify them, and then we have a plan of action.
Okay. So, we have a motion.
You might have missed that one.
But actually, the motion that
Motion
you...
is to refuse. We
Right.
want to accept.
So there's the one other property, which is the Winter Street property. So you could discuss that and then make your decision of what you want to do with that property after Nancy gives you the information for that. Because the only motion we need is for the refusal not to take, So if you decide that 39 Central you want to take, you don't do anything with that, and then I'll do the process, and I'm going to be coming back to you later anyway with, unfortunately, we're going to have a list probably of at least 15 properties that will be deeding in the next month. So just to, give you a heads up on that now. So 39 Central will be put in that group, which I will bring back to you to at least with the list of all the ones that we plan to record deeds for. So I'll let Nancy talk about Winter Street, and then you can.
Okay.
So, Winter Street, and I'm going to recommend that you hold on taking action on this for another at least 30 to 60 days. Our files show that comments that there was at one time a building of some kind here, and the story was that transformers from Washington Street were cut up here, and there were concerns in our file that there might be PCBs buried on the site. There is a 1984 letter from Health and Human Services. This is before DES existed. Environmental laws between 1984 and 2018, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it's a stone age in terms of the change. So there's a letter in there from them saying, well, they've sampled the site and it doesn't look significantly contaminated. Well, that makes my sort of red flag go up. So I don't know what significant is in 2018 terms. So I've sent the information I have to DES, and they're going to do what they can to track down the old Human Services file, just so we have more information. It doesn't mean that, you might want to take this in a month or two, but I'd like to give you a little more information.
Okay. Or is the council all set on this? So just for clarity, with regard to what Mrs. Melcher said, this motion, my concern is if we're not clear as a council on 39 Central, it might impact how people vote on this motion as it is written, yes or no. They may say no because it doesn't include 39, but they want to refuse 71 or Winter Street. So if we could just say on record what position we are with 39, then we can go ahead and read this motion to refuse.
Yeah, that's
and
fine. If you want to
everybody's
make a
clear.
separate one on that one,
Okay.
that would be clear instruction that, yes, you
Okay.
want that. That's fine.
Okay, so just if you could go down, if you could do, it's not a vote, but I just want to get a sense of where you're at in 39. Are you for taking it or refusing it? 39 Central is the house, so starting with you, Councilor Olsek. You're for taking it, yes? Yes.
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 No, but
Okay.
with the understanding that you could at any time.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So who would like to read the motion that's in front of us to refuse the tax deed for Winter Street?
I can do that.
Councilor Pope.
Okay, it's a motion to refuse the tax deed. The city council, having reviewed the list of impending tax deed parcels as presented by the city's tax collector, hereby notifies the tax collector that she shall not execute a deed of the real estate to the city for the following parcels because the council has determined in its judgment that acceptance would subject the city to undesirable obligations or liability risk, including the potential liability as an owner of the property under state and federal law, which imposes strict liability on owners for environmental impairment of the real estate involved. That would be 73-1 and Winter Street, which is identified as a potentially hazardous site. The city council further authorizes the tax collector or other city officials to enforce all such tax liens upon the above listed properties as provided by RSA 80:50 and through other remedy provided by law.
Second.
Okay, so that motion was made by Councilor Pope and seconded by Assistant Mayor Dameron. Any further discussion before we take the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
No.
opposed? Whoop,
I'm a no.
you're, okay. So, let me start that again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. So, Counselor Stone was opposed. Okay. Director Merrill, when would you be ready, do you think, to come back with more information on this site?
As soon as I get it back from DES, I'll put it on an agenda,
Okay.
the information.
But for us, for just a ballpark, are you
I'm
anticipating
thinking
6
within
weeks?
the next month I should be getting something. He's had it for a week and a half now, so.
So maybe end of September. I just have to get a feel for
Yeah.
scheduling. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2019-6, apply for community revitalization